Hi, welcome to another episode of the Tango Banter. I am Yelizaveta, and today I have a very special episode for you. Like so many of us during COVID, I was forced to take most of my activity online. I hosted Earth Virtual Malanga, I taught classes, and I did musicality seminars all online as a way to continue my work as a teacher and to connect with people around the world. And it was in this way that I met many new dancers, one of whom is Risa Benson. Right from the start, Risa sparked my imagination and has continued to be a source of inspiration for me. We've talked at length about the realities of being a woman in tango, aging, losing a loved one, persevering, and finding a way to continue to dance regardless of the inevitable obstacles. At some point, I invited Risa for a casual banter on my podcast, and to my delight, she agreed. And today, I am happy to share with you this very special banter with Risa Benson, where we talked about tango, self-preservation, and determination. So, without further ado, please enjoy my conversation with Risa Benson. You're at this stage of your life, you've gone through so much, you've somehow picked up tango and you're a leader and you're continuing to grow. I don't see that very much. I feel like that's something that is unique about you. And I kind of want to just learn a little bit more about you and what has made you this adventurous and this committed
I
to
think
staying so alive.
there's two words this week. One word that came up for me was self-preservation.
Mm.
And then there was another one that just came to me, but it just disappeared. So I have no idea what it was. Oh, determination.
Self-preservation and determination.
And I think they are very connected. And, I was thinking back on my childhood, and my father was an Olympic cross-country skier. So
Wow.
what does that tell you, first of all? So here is a guy who chose his job that he had to do because, Olympics was not for making money, according to it being far enough away so he could run there and run back. And this was in the 20s.
And so how far did he run?
Well, I think it was 11 kilometers. I'm not quite sure, but it was obviously an amount that he felt was necessary to stay in shape. Because if you're a cross-country skier, you're powering.
That's amazing. And so what about your mom? Was she equally?
Totally, totally the opposite. But his sister and his older brother, they were all in the Olympics. His sister was a world champion giant slalom.
What is that?
It's you have a hill, and you have sticks in it, and you have to go in a particular pattern through those sticks.
Oh, on skis.
Yes.
Yes, I've seen it. Okay. It's called slalom. That just shows how informed I am about sports.
Well, there's slalom and giant slalom. They're different. Because slalom is tight turns and giant is longer. It's a longer course and a different kind of requirement.
And so she was the world champion in the giant slalom?
Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So that's that's a lot. And so do you feel like you took on more of that side of the family and your
Oh,
way
completely,
you yeah.
complete. Yeah.
Not the more relaxed side, which was your mother, I'm guessing.
No, no. She was a smoker and a drinker. I
Oh,
mean,
wow.
figure that one out. But
And
she was smart. She was smart. But anyway,
and so
so
you got into dance at some point as a kid.
I got into dance when we got a TV, and there was a program called Bandstand.
Bandstand.
That was long before your time. And, they had kids that came on from locally, mostly from the Catholic schools. And so they would be dancing. And I taught myself how to dance the thing that they were doing because, I mean, I was just desperate for some kind of dance.
Mm,
So I taught myself how to do that. Then I taught my sister to do the other role, which I didn't recognize was the boys' role. That's
mm.
how unschooled I was, but it was didn't matter. And
Mhm.
we all used to play around with that. So that was really the beginning of my dance experience.
How old were you at the time?
I was 13.
And then what what did that evolve
How
into?
Oh God. Uh, you know, I at school I had some modern dance, and I told my mother that I wanted to go to New York and be a dancer, and she said, if you do that, don't come home.
Hmm.
So that put a bit of a kibosh on. I wouldn't know how to do that.
Hmm.
So, it took time, but somehow I figured out how to make it work. And so I spent some time in New York, and then in Colorado, I taught ballet and jazz at this small little dance studio that we had. And that's what I mean by just insisting. I'm determined. I need this. I want it.
Yeah, you've made that comment before that dance is almost like the life force that you need to continue. Is that
Yes,
a fair
yes,
assessment?
I would say so because uh, at the time that we got this TV, we got this because my father died in an avalanche.
Hmm. Wow.
And yeah, I, there's some karma in that department. But so, movement was the thing. But, even as a kid, he was the one who always got us going. I have pictures of me standing naked on my brother's back, balancing.
Wow.
I mean, it's weird.
What
Um,
was the point of that exercise?
oh, it was called twinning, which means, how do you say that in English? Gymnastics.
Oh, interesting.
You just make up something to do because you can learn to balance by standing on something that isn't stationary, that kind of thing.
Wow. So he must have been really creative because it sounds like he will just come up with whatever to get you moving in a certain way.
I, so long ago, I don't know.
Wow.
it was what was.
Yeah.
So,
Was that common when you were growing
oh,
up that no.
oh no, oh no. And he used to run in the park, and people just thought he was completely crazy
Really? Because he would run so long or
because nobody ran.
back
I,
then?
yeah, I'll tell you another story about him. He was working in New York, but of course, he was still preparing for his winter activity. And so he would run in the park, but you couldn't go to Central Park in running clothes in the 30s or the 20s. So he had a suit. He put a suit on, went to the park, took the suit off, put it into a tree, did his running, came back, and somebody had stolen his suit.
No. Oh,
Yes, yes. So he had to go find a cop and explain. what had happened, be escorted home. I mean, nobody would believe it nowadays. Nobody would believe it.
Wow, that's amazing. That's amazing. What a different time that was.
Oh, oh yes.
Yeah. So it's interesting to me that you, even though you were exposed to a lot of that physical activity, your direction was into dance versus athletics. You didn't go into sports, you went into dance. Did you feel that dance in particular had something different to offer than just physical activity and that feel good adrenaline that you get from
So,
exercise?
I remember as a kid going to some shows, either in New York or when we were living in Austria, we would go somewhere and people would be dancing. And
Hmm.
that, I loved that aspect. I wanted to do that. And I actually thought that I had choreographed a piece when I was 12 or 11 and presented it to the camp where I was. I mean, I hate to think how terrible it was, but I was so into it. It's really quite adorable.
Wow.
So the determination for that had to be there. That's all I can say.
Wow. And so then you were dancing professionally and then teaching for how long?
No, I wouldn't exactly call it professional because that's kind of a very different category. But I taught for about 10 years.
Wow. And it was always ballet and jazz.
And then I taught dance aerobics.
Oh, fun.
There's better money in that. And then I taught other kind of uh, body movement stuff. It was so long ago, it's hard to remember.
So at what point did tango come onto the scene?
Oh, well, many, many years past that period. Uh, in 1998, we went to one of those shows, Forever Tango or whatever the
Oh,
other one.
that's right. Yeah, Forever Tango.
And, it was just like, oh my God, the music. I loved the music. And, a week later, we were in class.
Wow. And so this is you and your husband.
Yeah.
And how long were you together by that point?
We've been together 86, 96, 12 years.
So quite a while. And so was he sort of on board automatically? Was he kind of as in love with it
Well,
as you were?
well, I not quite, but he loved the music, and he had been a marathoner,
Mm,
so he had some physical capabilities, but then he gained like 50 pounds after he stopped running. You know how that happens.
yeah.
Uh, so it was kind of hard getting himself back from that.
Mm. Did how was it learning tango? Because when you're a couple learning tango and there's possibilities of fighting or
Oh, oh,
conflict.
oh, oh,
With
really?
I'm being politically correct
Uh,
and
Oh,
diplomatic here.
oh,
What
I
was
have,
that like for you?
I've always said we never argued, almost never argued about anything except tango.
Really?
And I can remember one time coming back in Philadelphia from it wasn't even a Malonga in those days, and saying to him, if you don't try harder, I'm going to divorce you.
Wow. Wow.
Not nice. I mean, I'm ashamed of that, but it's the truth because I remember it. And I mean, we've had times where, slamming doors and get out of the house, leave me alone, Oops. Maybe we can just cut some of that part from.
That's the best part. That's the juicy
Oh,
part.
okay. There. Right. Whatever. Uh, it, I think it speaks to the frustration of a follower
Mm,
with what is required from the leader when in fact the leader doesn't know anything
Hmm.
about filming.
Right.
So we're really right there at complexity of the whole process, the way it's been set up
Hmm.
in the States at any rate.
And I'm wondering, because you're coming from a different cultural, environment of the when you grow up, and I don't know, the generational aspect of having to come into this place where the man is the leader and he's the one who's supposed to know, and you as a woman, did any of that come up for you, like being able to speak up and finding a way to kind of assert yourself? Was that, did that play a role?
Well, patience is not one of my better traits. So I think the answer has to be, uh, well, that whole aspect of it, I really didn't like it. And I still don't like the kind of, uh, I don't like the position at the end that professionals take when she's down below looking up at him.
Mm-hmm.
Because that says everything to me about what doesn't interest me in this dance form.
Mm. And did he sort of, I can
Oh,
imagine him being like, why can't you be like this? Why can't you just,
no,
do
no,
this?
no, he wasn't like, no, he wasn't. I was the one who was,
Oh, yeah.
why can't you put your foot where I asked you to put it? Because I need it to be there so I can step over it.
Hmm.
That kind of stuff.
How was your dynamic when you went to Milongas together? Did you dance together a lot, or did you kind of have more independence in terms of who your dance partners were?
Uh, Here in Albuquerque, we were, yeah, quite independent,
Hmm.
but he was always available to dance with when, when I needed him to be there, which was something that, of course, now I miss.
Mm. How long did you guys dance together until he passed?
Well, when we moved here, there was a period between uh, 2002 and 2012 when we didn't have a regular tango dance practice because there weren't, we had moved to a different part of Philly. And uh, so we just had all those tapes, Daniel Trenner's tapes and all those people from back then. So we would kind of pick it up and drop it and pick it up and drop it. Uh, so that depends on how you're asking the question.
Gotcha.
So, uh, it's hard for me to remember. I think it was 2019 that he died.
2019?
I think that's correct. Yes, that I'm pretty sure that's right.
Wow. So it was quite a while.
It,
And
yeah.
you survived it. Like you made it work. How did you do that? Because having gone through several romantic relationships that started in tango and went up in flames and totally were destroyed by tango,
So,
it seems like a really particular challenge to make it work with someone who's your romantic partner,
but
life partner, and your dance partner.
so I would say that the difference is that we were boyfriend and girlfriend when we were 16.
Mm.
And then we had another relationship a bit later, uh, 10 years later, and then our final 30 years together. So there was a background in other activities. And I'm sure that would make a difference because now you have at least another aspect of your relationship that you can fall back on.
Mm, the foundation. Yeah,
Yes.
that's true. I think when there is some sort of other dimension to the relationship beyond the tango side, I think that definitely helps. Wow, how beautiful. So you were dancing together for a long time, and then when did you start leading? Did you start leading while you guys were still dancing
I
together, or?
I tried it quite early on because I thought, why can't I? But I really had no idea. I didn't do it really seriously, but I did it. And I would say, uh, you know, I I feel like I think I did start before he died to do it more seriously, but I can't quite remember. But I think I did. Uh,
Hmm.
but it was kind of on and off, and it was only after that that I became a lot more interested in it. Plus, I don't have a partner. So, particularly during the pandemic, I was dancing here with two sticks. So, because I knew how to follow, I would put the sticks where I knew they should go, and I then
Hmm.
put what I figured should come from the other side, if that makes sense.
Yeah. And so it sounds like you really love practicing in general. Like it seems you're drawn to the process of learning. What is it that you keep coming back to in your practice? What's your
I,
ambition there?
I love the spatial relationship of the positioning of the two people and the possibilities in almost every step where something different could happen.
Wow.
And I think that, from using sticks, the sticks, seeing as they're not a person, it's not perfect, but the sticks will stay where you put them un- until you can bloody well figure out what it was you thought you saw. Does that make sense?
Mhm, mhm. And how does tango feel to you now after having danced it for so many years? Has it changed the way you perceive it or experience it, or has it stayed the same?
I'm a lot more interested in some kind of very small aspect of what is happening at any given time. And now I'm trying to think, how can I explain what I mean by that? Um, well, again, it's the same kind of thing as I was saying about the sticks, that that uh, along with the music and these four legs, there's so many moments where you can change a given expectation and add or subtract something. Uh, and clearly, I wasn't that aware of that 10 or 15 years ago because you just can't be. Uh, I mean, they're just endless things to be interested in, including, what does the embrace feel like? Why does this embrace feel really nice and this one feel absolutely horrible? And what
Mhm.
do you do in relation to the one that feels horrible to make it bearable until you can get off the floor, kind of thing.
Yeah. And when your husband died, did that affect how you experienced or thought about tango? Was it hard to go out dancing? Because I can imagine having that, awareness of your partner always there and not having that. Did that affect your experience of tango?
Well, I went very soon afterwards because I because I had to. I
Mm.
mean, what are you going to do? Sit in the house and feel sorry for yourself? It's not going to work.
I mean, you could do that, but obviously you didn't do that.
It, it, it didn't seem like a viable option.
Mm.
It didn't seem like something. It wouldn't feel good.
And did you I'm assuming that's when you started leading more? Is that
Oh,
true?
I
Did
would
you
say
find?
that yes, of course, because I did not have a partner.
Mhm. So you kind of use that as an incentive to just lead more and and work on
Yeah,
that more.
yes, but it's also true that it was really with the pandemic where I couldn't go anywhere that that became the main focus.
Hmm. So right now, I keep thinking the very first thing that you said when we started a conversation was self-preservation and determination. And it's kind of interesting just to observe your life arc and how those themes continue to inform you even now. Because it sounds like movement is your answer to life's problems. Like if you can move, you can deal with things.
I
Is that true?
yes, because I'm remembering a very unpleasant relationship I had with a guy who was supposed to come. I was staying at somebody's house in the dark in the middle of nowhere, and he was supposed to come, and he didn't come all night. And I was scared of the dark. And the next day, I thought the only way I can deal with this, I went down to the beach and I ran and I
Mm.
screamed and I ran and I screamed. And when I finally saw him, I was just like,
Oh wow.
that was a big deal. I mean, that made an impression on me.
So is the urge to somehow act in the presence of fear or in the presence of terror, to somehow do something active versus just sit and wait in terror.
Uh, that's completely out of the question. you know, I uh, I mean, have you ever spent any time in the middle of the night thinking about what if somebody comes, and then you kind of plan, what should I do?
I haven't. Not in a very memorable way. I feel, but I have had moments in my life where I would be so somehow under so much psychological pressure that I would just kind of have to do something, you know? So I remember one night I got up and it was like 2 o'clock in the morning and I was in this really bad place in my life. I guess I felt very hopeless and helpless and lost. And I went out and I was staying with some friends near a park. And I went to the park in the middle of the night, full moon. And I went up on this hill and I just danced like in the middle of nowhere with like all this darkness around me. And some of it was this feeling of going into the darkness and facing that sort of discomfort, like, oh, I'm going to go out in the dark and it's nighttime, there's nobody there, and what if somebody sneaks up on me and whatever. But there was something about like wanting to act and wanting to do something irrational as a way of meeting this thing that's kind of consuming my mind. And so on that level, I guess I'm kind of relating to what you're talking about.
Well, I think it's very much the same thing. And in the process of moving and dancing, as you described, you were making it impossible for this person to sneak up on you.
Mm-hmm. Whether it's, I guess to me, whether physical or metaphorical, it's just that activity of moving creates some sort of protection in itself. So now that you're leading a lot and you're dealing with those challenges, and we've talked at length about different obstacles that you might have, both as an older woman in your community and having to deal with that age thing that happens so often in tango, and also being a leader and kind of dealing with some people not wanting to dance with you. What are your strategies? Like, how do you deal with that? Because I know for a lot of people, that's enough to have for them to kind of quit. You know, a lot of people I've met over the years if they quit tango, a lot of them will say it's because they're getting too old and they're not getting the dances that they want, and that's a reason enough for them to quit. So what gives you the power to continue?
Well, you know, having my father die as he did, just like that, and the same thing happening to my twin sister 20 years later,
Mm,
dying in an avalanche. So from one day to the next, my life was completely different. What am I going to do?
mm.
Collapse? Go home to my mother? I had two kids. You just have to take the next step. And in the process, anything is better than giving up. So, if some guy doesn't dance with me because I have white hair and I'm not wearing a short skirt, it's really far more his problem than mine.
Mm.
I That's not to say I don't always feel like that. I mean, because you can come up with all sorts of other reasons. Like the worst would be, oh, he saw me dance and he didn't like how I danced. That would be a much bigger thing. The whole aspect of having to force yourself to get up and lead when you feel self-conscious or whatever is an aspect of all of this that the other choice is not to do it. And if you don't do it, then the evening is less interesting and you might sit there for a hell of a lot longer. And I prefer to dance. So that's probably the big thing. If the music is playing and it's something I want to dance to, I will get up and I will lead, even if I feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, I found that to be true for myself, even when I have experienced a similar disadvantage, perhaps that other people are getting asked, people with less experience are getting the dances, and I'm not. And that seems to be this sort of box that we've talked about at length in other conversations, where we as women sort of have to deal with this thing that has been given to us, which is like, on the one hand, we have a lot of abilities and we excel in so many ways, but then there's this point where those abilities and all of our achievements don't really add up to the thing that we want, and we have to kind of redefine everything. I know for me, for a long time, I was so focused on technique and getting my dance to be so perfect and so um, almost sterile. Like I wanted it to look just so perfected in every way. And then in the end, the harder I worked, the less I was getting in return. You know, the less fun I was having.
Yes.
And I guess it's kind of like a big shift overall, not just in tango, but I'm even seeing it in sort of in life, kind of examples of that, where I've noticed in the other fields, like an entrepreneurial field, which I'm a part of now these days. I notice men are much more likely to get an idea and have it, out in the world in the next 48 hours. No matter, like, it can be half-assed, it cannot be like thought out, and it will be out in the world, right? Whereas for women, we're like, we need to make sure it's perfect first. We need to make sure everything lines up and it's all perfected in every way, and we account for every possibility before we put it out. And I kind of see that trend in tango as well, where a lot of times women, we spend so much time trying to perfect ourselves in order to get the thing that we want. But in the end, it's like we don't actually, we don't get it if we are waiting to have somebody else give it to us. We kind of have to just decide that we're going to take it for ourselves whenever we decide to, rather than waiting.
Well, I would 100% agree. And it's better for everything. It's better for the energy in the room. Because what I've noticed and what a bunch of us have noticed here, there aren't enough men. Why would 8 women sit on the bench all night because there's only 3 guys? I mean, I'm exaggerating, but right when those 8 women could be dancing with each other.
It's true. I mean, logistically, it totally makes sense. But what do you say? I'm curious because I've had this response, and you've shared your share of these kinds of experiences where you invite a woman to dance and she is like, "Yeah, I prefer dancing with guys."
Yes. Yes, I just had one of those a week or so ago. I think we maybe talked about it. Uh, and it happened 2 nights ago. Again, somebody who said, I'm sitting this one out. You know, it's very annoying. It's very annoying. But if you're a woman, and somebody is coming near you and you know they want to dance with you, but you don't want to dance with them, what do? You fool around with your shoes or
Mhm.
something.
Mhm.
So that's a nonverbal, but it's still the same thing ultimately, is it not? So in a way, isn't it better if you go up to a woman and say, no, I really prefer dancing with men? You've got the information, that's it, it's over and done with. So I hadn't really thought about that, but it's cleaner.
Mhm. More efficient.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a big hurdle for a lot of women I know who are up and coming leaders, and that psychological tension around being rejected, right? Being rejected when you invite somebody to dance. And I know that it's it's sort of like an anxiety filling experience to be like, oh, what if they say no? What if they say no? But once you get the no, it's like, okay, all right, let's move on. Like it's not a big deal. And ultimately, maybe that's like one of the little paths to empowerment that I've noticed in myself, that actually facing that discomfort of being rejected, or almost even like inviting that possibility and like let it just happen. Then on the other side of it, it feels like, okay, all right, experience that. Let's move on with the next thing. And
Well, I think also, in the community here, for instance, there aren't enough men, but sometimes there are a lot of guys at a particular milonga or something. But it's kind of the feeling of, well, there's also a sense of, are the guys now pissed off because you're dancing with women and they no longer have the power to uh, be the one to make your evening or not?
mhm.
Uh, I don't know if that's true. It might be. It might be true sometimes for them, but that's not my problem, you know. And I'm going to do what I need for myself. And if I am somewhere and I like the music, I want to dance. So
Yeah.
I'm going to find a way to make that happen.
It's so amazing to me how determined you are. And I'm curious what
Oh, I
you
can be
would.
shit. I can be chicken shit. Believe me.
Well, I'm
But
sure we all have
that
that.
makes me very unhappy when I feel like that. So, you just have to look at how to make this work for yourself.
Yeah. And I guess that was my question. Like, from your perspective, how do you get to this place of succeeding no matter what? And it sounds like you really have this view that you just have to be self interested enough to take what you want in the whatever form that you can take it versus waiting for it to kind of be given to you.
Well, I I think that I have felt that somehow that even though a lot has been given to me, there's also a lot that hasn't been given to me.
Mm-hmm.
And, and seeing as I'm looking at the later part of my life, you could say that one of the impetuses is uh, you're running out of time.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to light a fire under your butt.
To put it lightly.
Yes.
Yeah, I can imagine you are possibly a little bit more daring even because you're kind of like it doesn't matter anymore. You might as well get it now at whatever cost versus wait because you don't know, right? And yeah, that's such an interesting aspect that I'm sort of I think about as I look ahead and I've thought sometimes I think about death and I think about I've had this thought like, I just want to die at the milonga.
Oh,
Like, I just want to be
agree
sitting
completely.
there
Yeah.
and let the La Comparsita play. And then I just kind of like quietly fall asleep. Like that would be my ideal way to go.
I agree. I agree.
So, yeah, which is, that's a good dream to have. I think I've heard people say, we think a lot about how we want to live, but it's worthwhile to think, how do we want to pass? Like what kind of
Yeah.
fashion we want to exit in?
I
Do we
think
want?
didn't you tell a story about an older woman who was a smoker in Portland?
Yeah. Oh, I
And
love.
you
Yeah,
saw her the last time that she was there, and she died shortly afterwards. But she
that's
was there.
right. Yeah. And she, later I found out she had cancer. Right.
Yes.
And so
Yes.
she was, I have this image of her and, so much of my work now, I feel, I feel her presence and her inspiration in it because the powerhouse that she was at the very end and how youthful she still came across was a like a huge light for me um, because when I look around and I look around at my peers now, people my own age, slightly older, and then people like my mom who are entering their 70s, I see a lot of this slowing down and giving up and succumbing to, and this attitude of being a victim of your either your physical circumstances or the loss of something, loss of health, loss of mobility. And it was such a an inspiration to me early on when I got into tango. One of the things that was so inspiring is that I saw older people staying out at 1, 2 in the morning in Buenos Aires. They're dancing, they're out, they're not in bed watching TV or whatever, and they're not like giving up on life. They're still experiencing that romance and they're being sensual and they're dressing up and they're kind of enjoying life, drinking champagne, right? And that was such an incredible vision for me to witness and be like, oh, being older doesn't mean that you are losing, like that there's a loss, that there's a just an experience of loss. So from that perspective, it feels like what you're saying is there's this whole other side to the experience when you have a different appreciation of tango and a different, perhaps even a different goal in mind when you go out dancing.
Well, I don't know what you're. I don't have. I will never have the experience that you have had of dancing tango at an early age. So I can't compare it to that. Uh,
Mm,
An interesting concept, what the difference is. And maybe it's not that different. Do you know what I mean?
mm-hmm.
What is different is that you could have 40 more years of tango ahead of you.
At least I hope.
Yes, I agree, but I will not have 40 years.
Does that, so the question, the philosophical question is the tango that we dance different? Is my tango different because I still have, all these years, hopefully, and you have less years? Does that change the experience of tango? And there's no answer to that, but I do feel like the context really matters when it comes to the way we express ourselves.
I don't know whether, I mean, there's, as you said, there's no way to know what the
Hmm.
is. Uh, but really, isn't it just as much that at the moment when you're doing it, how different can it be? When I'm dancing, I'm not thinking, uh, what do I have, 10 or 20 years left at the most? I'm not
Hmm.
thinking that. So maybe it's irrelevant.
It's possible. Yeah, because tango is that timeless state. It's like it's always tango o'clock.
Uh,
Like you tune into it and it's there and it's timeless and it's kind of beyond the consideration of this world. Thank you for agreeing to this. I really appreciate you taking the time and being so forthcoming in this
Well,
conversation.
it's always such a pleasure to talk with you and look at your face, which I love.